I love the United States. I mean, this is my home, and I have my
Right.
family here and everything. So this is not just like some random place I write about.
Right.
But um, I think it's important for us, for artists, to be able to express, when we see something can um, that can be beneficial or detrimental, to call it out.
All right, we are loud and clear and also safe with Mem of EXUMER. How are you doing, sir?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I turned 42 not too long ago, and Possessed by Fire turned 40 this year. So I have to ask you, what currently is in worse condition after 4 decades? The master tapes or your neck or your hearing?
Uh, Man, I don't know. That's a good question. I think we're all in good shape, actually. Nothing to worry about, really. We're still kicking it hard. So my hearing is there, and my voice is slightly different than on Possessed by Fire,
Yes.
but yeah, that's to be expected after 40 years of doing this. So.
Of course, of course. We're not going to spend too much time on looking back today. But I mean, it is insane. Obviously, 40 years. Um, when you listen back to that, do you still see yourself in that, or do you feel like that was an album recorded by a totally different person?
No, I think I mean, it will always be part of my DNA. And that was my teenage self.
Right.
And, adolescence is a turbulent time. Uh, that record is a good reflection of the time itself, the era that we lived through, and also of myself, how I felt, how I channeled certain feelings, and how I, saw the world and viewed everything. So it's a cool document,
Hmm.
and a nice reference to what was going on 40 years ago, basically.
Yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. There is something interesting that the energy of teenagers and thrash metal that creates magic. So now, 40 years later, you're coming out with this album that, in every respect, feels heavier and harsher than even that, even though it has that classic status at this point. Was it therefore so important for you that to start this record not with like a long-winded, instrumental intro or like some symphonic buildup, but just kick it off with a good thrash riff and show everybody that it's straight to the point?
I mean, that's always the intent. We don't see ourselves as like folks that want to reinvent the wheel here.
Right.
We have our trademark sound, and we want to, be true to that trademark sound without repeating ourselves too much, and give a fresh new coat, basically. Um, and I think that was the intent, and that's always the intent. So you want to let people know, hey, we're still the same band that you fell in love with whenever you did, and we're still here to deliver whatever you're looking for with a slightly different twist and turn,
Right.
but not to the point where like you get a different band, or you get, I mean, we feel most comfortable doing what we do, and we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations where we're saying, we can't do the exact same thing again. So
Right.
that's not comfortable. But we also want to make people feel like, hey, they're tuning in, experience something and that they're familiar with, but there's still an element of surprise. So I think last time when we did Hostile Defiance, the
Hmm.
surprise was that we were like, hey, we're open for more experimentation. Maybe we're doing a few more melodic things here and there. And this time the surprise is actually we're going to be heavier than ever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so that's within the realm of who we are, and that's, I think, is healthy. But at the same time, I definitely want to make sure that people get what they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
as a band, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you say like on the previous record, we allowed some experimentation more than on this album. Um, Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, you disappeared as a band. Other bands that were still around, they did a lot of that experimentation in those days.
Right.
A lot of thrash metal bands from the 80s try to rediscover themselves as a groove metal band or a gothic band, an industrial band. You never went through that because, unfortunately, you weren't there. But looking back, has that been one of one of the most silver of silver linings that you never had to go through that phase?
We did that, but we did that with a different name.
Right.
So in the 90s, we had like a rap metal project that was really successful for the time, but it was a different name. It was a different time. We all were like on a different trip. So we would
Right.
not use the EXUMER. There were 3 members of EXUMER in that band. It was
Right.
Ray, myself, and Bernie, who are like all EXUMER OGs. And we didn't do that because different band, different time, different spirit. And I think in that sense, we did that intentionally, and the intent paid off because we have 6 records out. They're all thrash metal records. There's nothing. Yeah, other bands have like enormous catalogs, but they take left and right turns. We
Mm-hmm.
just stay on that one path with this type of music. For good or wrong, there's no wrong or right. For better or it's worse. But it's kind of like, it is what it is, and that's what we did. And I'm glad that, if you opened up our catalog, again, you know what you're getting, and I think that's really, really cool. It turned out to be that way.
Let's dive into some of these, of the themes that are heavily on this album. One of them is obviously, dealing with, is maybe the best way of saying it, false prophets, dangerous false prophets. For you,
Right.
do you think that most people that you would label as a dangerous false prophet, do you believe that they actually believe their own bullshit, or do you think that they are knowingly actively manipulating people?
I mean, first of all, I think, the idea of a false prophet for me is like you don't have to be a cult leader to achieve that status. You could be just
Right.
you can be a lying politician for all I know. And that's that's the lens I employ this. And usually people have exterior motives to, do certain things. It's very rare that you find someone who's not, who goes out there to, do things for the welfare of others. And
Right.
that's okay. I mean, I live in a free country. You can do whatever you want. But I believe the minute you are becoming a public figure and you're saying, I'm here to improve, whatever condition or someone's life, and then all of a sudden, you're just saying it in order to gain own personal wealth or power, that's when it becomes difficult for me and
Yeah.
challenging. And that's that is my baseline from where I started writing the lyrics for this record. And, I had a good amount of fodder for, that with the things that went on for the past 10 years,
Yeah, yeah, for
and
sure.
that's where, my, that's how I informed myself for this record.
Yeah, yeah. This record is informed by political climate in the States in the last 10
Mhm.
years. I mean, also beyond that for sure, but there's a social and political criticism or um,
An
mirror held up to
observance. Yes.
exactly
Right.
to the United States. You're originally from Germany. You moved to the States in the 90s, so you've been there for a long time. Um, Now that the US is also home for you, much more
Yeah.
than just home, probably, does that make it? Does that making writing critically about that land of the free where you're at? Is that becoming easier because you understand it better over the years, or is it harder because it is your home now and it hurts more?
So to me, like, I think there are realities that are just universal realities that we have to accept to a certain degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the realities for me is, um, I have to live here, and I love the United States. I mean, this is my home, and I have my
Right,
family here and everything. So this is not just like some random place I write about.
right,
But um, I think it's important for us, for artists, to be able to express, when we see something can um, that can be beneficial or detrimental, to call it out.
right.
And that to me is really important. And I'm going to continue doing that, you know. Um, and the music is just a vehicle for me to be able to do that.
Yeah,
And that's how I treat my role in this whole thing. That's how I see, how I should be looking at conditions here on the ground, and be able to discuss them. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's always going to be my main driver is like, I'm an observer. I'm going to show you what I see. It's up to you to then take that information and do whatever you want with it.
you and I, we both come from European countries originally. You're from
Right.
Germany. I'm originally
Yeah.
from Belgium. We grew up in worlds where you have multi-party systems where multiple
Yep.
parties have to work together to form a government.
So,
It's
yes.
not like in the US. It's
Right.
one
Yeah.
against the other. It's you against me, right against wrong, left versus right, black versus
Right.
white.
Right.
And but that system leads to what you talk about in the song Fratricide, where it's not
Yes.
just you're wrong because you're on the other side of the fence, you're evil because you're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
Is that even more important, that identity issue, than quote unquote who's right?
I think when I first moved here, there was nowhere near as much bipartisanship than
Right.
than than now. So I think a lot of it has to do with what we're currently going through in the past 10 years. I mean, you always will have folks that are like on one side of the fence or in the middle of the fence. But I think everything has just been ratchet up to like 10. And I think that's another thing. I want the temperature to come down.
Right.
But that's why I also write these songs. And I think that is it's really, really important to do so. To have a dialogue. I mean, I'm bringing it as up. Like, I mean, obviously, I write these. We write as a band the
Mm-hmm.
music, and then when I write the lyrics, it's about to say, "Hey, these are like conditions that can be really, really problematic and are problematic," and I want people to hear it. If I say, "Oh, it's not that bad," and like, I call the song Fratricide because that's what it reminds me of, killing each other, killing your brother. And we're not literally doing that necessarily, but I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of folks who think about stuff like that.
For
Just
sure.
because they don't like someone else's ideology, and that to me is crazy.
Yeah. So you say that, for you, like how you want to contribute to getting out of the situation is by talking about it and making songs about
Absolutely.
that. Thrash metal has been doing songs about corrupt politicians, war, social injustice, and religion since the Reagan days.
Mm-hmm.
Is it hard to keep going given that it's been 40 years and we're still having to say the same things over and over again?
We're going to keep on going until things change or they don't change. But, again, like you can't be, I mean, thrash metal is a combination of punk rock and heavy metal. That's what thrash is, or punk, hardcore, and heavy metal. And, I'm a punk rocker at heart in terms of my attitude. And I'm going to be, I don't like talking about fantasy stuff so much. I mean, there was part of it was going on in our first two records, but we completely veered off from that. I mean, now, and I don't think singing about dragons right now is very fitting in terms of what we're going through, especially here in the States. So, um, if the climate changes, I might be writing about dragons one day, but for now, it's quite difficult for me to do that. And I have to be living in the here and now, not in the past, not in the future, but, so yeah, that's where I'm coming from with all of this.
I'm sure there's a few people by now watching this interview who have commented, keep politics out of metal, but politics and thrash metal are hard to separate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, let's just thrash as a whole, as a scene, it's gone up and down over the years. In the mid 2000s, following the what was it, the Thrash of the Titans festival in San Francisco, a bunch of the old bands came back and it was a bit of a resurgence, and new bands come out, kind of went down again. I feel like now the last 18 months there's been so many like amazing releases, both from new bands and comeback albums, but also just bands that have been going strong for some time. So it feels like we're really building on this new golden era, if you will. Do you think at this point that do you think that at this point the fans care about whether a band was founded in 1985 or in 2025, or has like streaming flattened history so completely that Possessed by Fire and a record released last Tuesday, get discovered at the same time?
I mean, timeline wise, maybe, but I think there's definitely something to be said about, being part of a foundation that, lays the groundwork for things to happen today. So I think that's really important. Like, and that will never change. I think you will always see that people will discover things. That's basically, the internet gives you the choice to discover stuff, right? You can discover something from 50 years ago today, and it's irrelevant when it was written in terms of when you discovered it. But if once you start digging and you do your research, all of a sudden things become take on a different flavor or life or meaning. And I think that's really, really cool in terms of what the internet provides today. So I think it's still relevant that if you write a record 40 years ago, that it was written 40 years ago. But, I think that's the coolest thing about the internet. It gives you the opportunity to find out about that.
Yeah.
The one thing that I, as a music fan and vinyl collector and, person that, is kind of coming from that era, I've been informed by that era, is, some of the mystique is gone, honestly.
Right.
Some of that not knowing, like, how would these people look like that make that music? Are they really walking around in leather and studs all day? Or are they like, what is, what's going to, like that accessibility to people, I think it's a little strange, but that's part of. I don't want to go back. You see, I'm not one of these people who are like, oh, back in the day, everything was better. It was just
Right.
different. It's just
Yeah.
different. And if you come to terms with that, I think then you can have a pretty happy life and still enjoy yourself without dwelling about what was going on 50 years ago. Because if you want to take it back that way, then a lot of the stuff that I enjoyed like listening now is like 50s 60s jazz records. I'm never going to be part of that. I've never been part of it, but I enjoy it. So I enjoy it now, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, so based on everything you just say, I want to wrap us up with a question about
Sure.
the scene now, kids today that are
Hmm.
really so in love with what it may have been like back in the day.
Sure.
So I go every year to the Hell's Heroes Festival in Houston. I
Hmm.
still think you should play that, and I would
I
like to
might, I
see
might
you.
have I might have a surprise for you.
Well, I told Christian that I want you to play in 2027, and he just
Oh.
said, I like your suggestions. Um, that festival, it's a
Hmm.
fantastic festival. I don't know if you've been as before, but um, you've got this crowd. A big part of the crowd are
Hmm.
kids that
Hmm.
are less than 25 years old. I'm in my 40s, to
Hmm.
give some context, um, and they do walk around as if
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
coming from a
sure.
promo photo of like an obscure band photo from 1980,
Hmm.
and there's that crowd that
Hmm.
is that like imagines 1986 to be exclusively tape trading, leather jackets, underground shows. What is something that they romanticize about the 80s thrash scene that you has actually lived it knew is absolutely completely fucking horrible?
Nothing really horrible in the sense, but it is painted in a picture that everything just kind of flowed. Like yeah, it was so easy. It kind of sucked waiting for a letter to come halfway across the world, right? It kind of like it was, things things were kind of like it was more primitive in a way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you always like nostalgia is so comforting to us is because it's something in the past and we can pick and choose what we want that
Yeah.
past to look like or feel like or be like. Whereas when you lived through it, it was like some of it was shitty, and like some of it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And
Not
but I
everything
think
was neon.
no, not everything was neon or elite. Like so but I do appreciate, I generally do appreciate the kids that honor that time and that tradition. So I am very much looking forward to playing Hell's Heroes one of these years, and I don't want to spread the word too early. So that I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah, so I would take everything with a grain of salt and say, a lot of it, a ton of it was awesome. Some of it was not that awesome, and some of it was just in the middle and was bland.
There you
So
go.
I'll leave it at that. All
Awesome.
right.
Awesome. Well, ma'am, thank you so much for your time today. I know that
All
you're
right.
extremely busy right now, and I appreciate your time. I will see you on a stage sooner rather than later, and then
Appreciate it.
we can all rock out to songs about how the world is falling apart.
All
Have a wonderful rest of the day.
right, my man. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers.